The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky surface of planet Cathara as Dr. Kim Taemin stepped out of the landing shuttle. The air tasted different here, cleaner somehow, with a hint of something sweet that reminded him of cherry blossoms, back on Earth. His boots crunched softly on the purple sand as he adjusted his research pack and looked around at the alien landscape. Captain Park Sora emerged from the shuttle behind him, her hand resting on her sidearm out of habit. She had been leading exploration missions for 15 years, but new planets still made her nervous. Behind her came Dr. Lee Jin-woo, the team's geology expert, already scanning the horizon with his instruments. "Remember, we're here for 3 days maximum," Sora said, checking her wrist display. "Survey the area, collect samples, and get back to the ship. Earth Command wants a full report on any signs of advanced civilization." Taemin nodded, but his attention was already drawn to the massive crystal formations jutting from the mountainside about 2 kilometers away. They sparkled like diamonds in the alien sunlight, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the valley floor. Something about them called to him, though he couldn't explain why. "Those crystals look artificial," Jin-woo said, pointing in the same direction. "Too perfect to be natural. We should investigate." The team made their way across the valley, following a path that seemed too smooth and well-worn to be coincidental. Strange plants grew along the edges, their blue leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Taemin stopped occasionally to take samples, fascinated by the unique biology of this world. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the crystals grew larger and more numerous. Soon they found themselves standing before what could only be described as a temple. Massive crystal pillars supported a roof that seemed to glow with inner light. Ancient symbols were carved into every surface, telling stories that no human could read. "This is incredible," Taemin whispered, running his fingers along one of the carved walls. "This civilization must have been incredibly advanced." Sora was less impressed and more worried. "Where are they now? What happened to the builders?" As if summoned by her question, shapes began to emerge from behind the crystal formations. The local inhabitants of Cathara stepped into view, and Taemin felt his breath catch in his throat. They were tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer like water and large eyes that held an ancient wisdom. Their leader, an elderly figure with intricate markings on his face, approached slowly. "You should not be here," the Catharan said in accented but clear English. The universal translator in Taemin's ear helped fill in the gaps. "The Guardian sleeps within. None may disturb its rest." "Guardian?" Jin-woo asked, his scientific curiosity overriding caution. "What kind of guardian?" The Catharan elder shook his head gravely. "Bekho, the white tiger of the stars. For 100 of your years, it has slept in the sacred chamber. Many have tried to enter the temple for its treasures. None have returned." Sora's hand moved back to her weapon. "What happened to them?" "The Guardian protects what must be protected," the elder replied simply. "It kills those who would steal from the sacred place." Despite the warning, Taemin found himself drawn toward the temple entrance. There was something about this place that felt familiar, as if he had dreamed of it before. The crystal archway seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat. "Taemin, get back here," Sora ordered, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. He stepped through the archway and into the temple. The interior was even more beautiful than the outside. Streams of colored light flowed through the crystal walls, creating patterns that moved and shifted like living things. The air hummed with energy, making the hair on his arms stand up. At the center of the great chamber, surrounded by smaller crystal formations, lay the most magnificent creature Taemin had ever seen. It was enormous, easily 12 feet from nose to tail, with pure white fur that seemed to glow with its own light. Its body rose and fell with slow, deep breaths, and even in sleep, there was an aura of immense power around it. This was Bekho, the legendary guardian. Taemin should have been terrified. Every instinct should have told him to run. Instead, he felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. The creature was beautiful, not terrifying. Majestic, not monstrous. He took a step closer, then another. Behind him he could hear Sora and Jinwoo arguing with the Ketharan elder, their voices echoing off the crystal walls. But Taimin paid them no attention. All of his focus was on the sleeping giant before him. As he drew nearer, something extraordinary happened. One massive eye slowly opened, revealing an iris of the deepest blue Taimin had ever seen. It was like looking into the heart of a sapphire. The eye focused on him, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Most people would have frozen in terror. The eye was larger than Taimin's entire head, and the intelligence behind it was clearly ancient and powerful. But instead of fear, Taimin felt something else entirely. Curiosity, wonder, and strangest of all, a sense of recognition, as if he were looking at an old friend he had not seen in years. "Hello," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The great eye blinked slowly, and then the other eye opened as well. Bekho raised his massive head, muscles rippling under the pristine white fur. From outside the temple came the sound of the Ketharan elder gasping in shock. "It wakes," the elder cried. "The guardian wakes, we must flee." But Taimin didn't move. He stood perfectly still as the enormous creature studied him with those impossibly blue eyes. There was no malice in that gaze, no hunger or anger. Only curiosity that seemed to mirror his own. Slowly, carefully, Bekho lowered his great head until it was level with Taimin's. The two beings, human and alien guardian, regarded each other in silence. The moment stretched on, full of possibilities neither of them yet understood. For the first time in 100 years, the white tiger of the stars was truly awake. And for the first time in his life, Dr. Kim Tae-min felt like he had found exactly where he was meant to be. 3 days had passed since the planned departure date, but Dr. Kim Tae-min refused to leave planet Cathara. Captain Park So-ra stood outside the Crystal Temple, watching her team member disappear inside for the 4th time that morning. Her patience was wearing thin. "Taemin, Earth Command is expecting our report," she called after him. "We cannot stay here forever." But Taemin was already inside, carrying his usual offering of dried fruit from their emergency rations. He had discovered that Bekho enjoyed the sweet taste, though the massive creature needed very little food to sustain itself. The Guardian's metabolism seemed to work differently than any Earth animal. Bekho was awake when Taemin entered, those brilliant blue eyes tracking his movement across the crystal chamber. The great white creature had not moved from his resting spot, but his head followed Taimin with obvious interest. There was something almost cat-like about the behavior, despite the creature's enormous size. "Good morning, friend," Taimin said softly, settling down on the smooth crystal floor about 10 feet away. This had become their routine. He would sit, talk quietly, and occasionally offer food. Bekho would listen and watch, sometimes making soft rumbling sounds that vibrated through the temple floor. Dr. Lee Jinwoo appeared at the temple entrance, his geological equipment forgotten in his arms. "Taemin, the captain is serious this time. She says we leave in 2 hours whether you come or not." Taemin sighed and looked at Bekho. "I cannot abandon him, Jinwoo. Look at those eyes. He has been alone for so long." Jinwoo stepped carefully into the temple, still nervous despite having made this journey several times now. The Guardian's presence was overwhelming, but he had begun to trust Taemin's strange connection with the creature. "The Catharans say he killed anyone who came near. Why is he different with you?" "I do not know," Taemin admitted. "But I think he was not killing out of evil. I think he was protecting something important, and everyone who came before wanted to take it away." As if understanding their conversation, Bekho made a low sound that was almost like a purr. The vibration filled the chamber with a peaceful resonance that made both humans feel calm. Jinwoo found himself relaxing despite his fears. "The Ketharan elder wants to speak with you," Jinwoo said. "He seems very interested in what is happening here." Later that afternoon, Taimin sat with the Ketharan elder whose name was Daesung. The old alien's shimmering skin caught the light as he spoke, his large eyes filled with wonder and confusion. "In all our histories, Bekho has never allowed anyone to approach. Daesung explained. Our ancestors built the temple around him when he first arrived, but even they could only observe from a distance. What makes you different, human? Taemin considered the question carefully. I think maybe because I do not want to take anything from him. I just want to understand him. Daesung nodded slowly. Perhaps that is the difference. Others came seeking the treasures of the temple, the ancient knowledge stored in the crystal chambers, but you seek only friendship. What kind of knowledge? Taemin asked, curious. Technologies beyond your understanding, ways to travel between stars faster than light, methods to create energy from nothing, weapons that could destroy worlds. Daesung's expression grew serious. These things are dangerous in the wrong hands. Perhaps Baekho knows this. That evening, Taemin returned to the temple alone. Captain Sora had given him until morning to make his decision about leaving. He found Baekho in the same spot, but this time the creature's posture seemed different. Less guarded, more relaxed. I might have to leave soon, Taemin said sadly, settling into his usual spot. My people want me to return to Earth. Baekho's ears twitched and he made a soft questioning sound. Taemin had begun to recognize different tones in the creature's vocalizations. This one sounded almost like concern. I wish I could stay, Taemin continued. I feel like we are just beginning to understand each other. As the hours passed, Taemin found himself growing tired. The stress of the past few days and the peaceful atmosphere of the temple were making his eyelids heavy. He tried to stay awake, knowing this might be his last night with his new friend, but sleep was slowly winning. His head nodded once, twice, and then he was asleep sitting up against one of the smaller crystal formations. His breathing became slow and steady, matching the rhythm that filled the temple. Sometime during the night, Taemin's unconscious body began to slide sideways. In his sleep, he shifted position until he was lying curled up on the crystal floor. The temple grew cold as the night progressed, and he began to shiver without waking. Baekho watched this for several minutes, his ancient mind processing something new. Never before had any creature shown such complete trust in his presence. Even the Catharans who revered him maintained a respectful distance. But this human had fallen asleep in his chamber, as vulnerable as a newborn. Slowly, carefully, the great guardian rose to his feet for the first time in decades. His massive paws made no sound on the crystal floor as he approached the sleeping human. With movements as gentle as a mother with her cub, Baekho lowered himself down beside Taemin. The warmth from his thick white fur immediately surrounded the sleeping scientist. Taemin, still deep in dreams, instinctively moved closer to the source of heat. Without waking, he nestled against Baekho's side, one arm draping across the creature's massive paw. For Baekho, this moment was a revelation. The touch was not demanding or taking. It was simply sharing warmth, sharing comfort, sharing presence. For the first time in a century of solitude, he was not alone. When morning came, Captain Sora entered the temple to collect her stubborn team member. What she found made her stop in her tracks and call softly for the others. Taemin lay peacefully asleep against the side of the legendary guardian, and Baekho's great head rested protectively over him. Both human and alien creature slept in perfect harmony, their breathing synchronized in the gentle rhythm of complete trust. It was a sight that would change everything the humans thought they knew about making friends across the stars. Dr. Kim Taemin woke to the most wonderful warmth he had ever experienced. For a moment he thought he was back in his childhood bed on Earth, wrapped in his grandmother's handmade quilt. Then he opened his eyes and saw pure white fur just inches from his face. He was lying against Baekho's side, the great guardian's massive body curved protectively around him. One enormous paw rested gently across his legs, not trapping him but sheltering him like a living blanket. Taemin could feel the steady rhythm of the creature's heartbeat through his fur. "Good morning, friend," Taemin whispered softly. Baekho's blue eyes opened and looked down at him with what could only be described as contentment. The guardian made a low, rumbling sound of greeting that vibrated through both their bodies. It was the most peaceful moment Taemin had ever experienced. The sound of footsteps made them both turn toward the temple entrance. Captain Park Sora stood there with her mouth hanging open, followed by Dr. Lee Jinwoo and the cultural specialist, Dr. Choi Ye-jin, who had arrived on the supply shuttle the previous day. "Taemin," Sora said carefully. "Are you all right?" "I have never been better," Taemin replied honestly. He sat up slowly, and Baek-ho adjusted his position to make the movement easier. "We slept together. He kept me warm all night." Ye-jin stepped forward, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. "This is incredible. The behavioral implications alone could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies communication." Over the following days, Taemin spent every waking hour in the temple with Baek-ho. The guardian began to show more interest in movement, occasionally standing to stretch his massive frame or walking slowly around the chamber. But he never strayed far from Taemin's side. It was during one of these quiet afternoons that something extraordinary happened. Taemin was reading his research notes aloud, partly to organize his thoughts and partly because Baek-ho seemed to enjoy the sound of his voice. As he spoke, he began to feel drowsy again. "The crystal formations show signs of artificial enhancement," he read from his tablet. "The geometric patterns suggest advanced mathematical understanding far beyond current human capabilities." His voice trailed off as sleep took hold. But this time the sleep was different. Instead of normal dreams, Taemin found himself experiencing memories that were not his own. He saw Kethera as it had been over 100 years ago, when the cities gleamed like jewels and the people lived in harmony with their crystal technology. He saw a young Ketheran princess named Nari, her skin glowing with health and happiness as she played in gardens that sparkled with bioluminescent flowers. And he saw Baek-ho, not as the massive guardian he was now, but as a smaller, more normal-sized creature with the same pure white fur and brilliant blue eyes. The princess and her companion were inseparable, exploring the crystal caves together and sharing a bond of pure friendship. But then came darker memories. Ships descending from the sky, bringing warriors who wanted to steal Kethera's crystal technology. Battles that turned the beautiful cities into ruins. The princess making a desperate choice to save what remained of her people's knowledge. Taemin experienced Nari's final moments as if they were his own. He felt her pouring her life force into the ancient machines, using forbidden technology to transform her beloved companion into an immortal guardian. He felt Baek-ho's anguish as he realized what she was sacrificing for him. "Promise me you will protect them." Nari's voice echoed across time. "Promise me you will keep the knowledge safe until someone comes who can be trusted with it." Taemin woke with tears on his face, the borrowed memories still vivid in his mind. Baek-ho was watching him with those ancient eyes, and now Taemin understood the deep sadness he had always sensed there. "She died to save you," Taemin whispered, "and you have been keeping that promise ever since." Baek-ho's response was a sound of such profound grief that it broke Taemin's heart. The guardian had been alone for over a century, carrying the weight of his promise and the memory of his lost friend. Meanwhile, Dr. Choi Ye-jin was making discoveries that changed everything. Her analysis of the temple's crystal structures revealed that they contained vast databases of information. Star charts, scientific formulas, technological blueprints, and historical records of dozens of extinct civilizations. "This is not just a temple," she told Captain Sora excitedly. "It is a library, a repository of knowledge from across the galaxy. Some of these technologies could advance human civilization by thousands of years." Sora felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "What kind of technologies?" "Faster than light travel without the energy requirements we currently need. Medical treatments that could extend human lifespan indefinitely. Energy sources that could power entire planets without harmful emissions." Ye-jin's voice grew more excited with each revelation. "And weapons, Captain. Weapons that could make us the most powerful species in known space." But even as Ye-jin spoke of these wonders, both women were aware of the massive guardian in the temple chamber. Baek-ho had killed to protect these secrets before. What would he do if he thought the humans meant to steal them? That evening, Taemin shared his vision with the others. The true history of Baek-ho and Princess Nari brought tears to Ye-jin's eyes and left Jinwoo speechless. Even practical Captain Sora found herself moved by the tale of sacrifice and eternal duty. He has been waiting, Taemin concluded, waiting for someone who would not abuse the knowledge he protects, someone who would treat it with the respect it deserves. But how do we prove we are worthy? Sora asked. Before anyone could answer, the Ketharan elder Dae Sung appeared at the temple entrance. His expression was urgent, filled with fear. "Ships, come from the void," he announced. "The hunters have found us. They seek the temple's treasures and they will not be turned away by warnings or guardians. They have weapons that can kill even Bekho." Through the crystal walls of the temple, they could see lights in the sky growing brighter. The void hunters had arrived and everything was about to change. Bekho rose to his feet, his massive frame radiating power and determination. But Taemin could see exhaustion in those blue eyes. A century of waiting had taken its toll, and the Guardian was not as strong as he once was. The test was coming, and none of them knew if they would survive it. The Void Hunter ships descended like black daggers against the purple sky of Cathara. There were 5 of them, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Their hulls were covered in spikes and sharp edges, designed to strike fear into anyone who saw them. Dr. Kim Taemin stood beside Bekho in the Crystal Temple, watching the ships land in the valley below. The Great Guardian's white fur was standing on end, and his blue eyes burned with an inner fire that Taemin had never seen before. This was Bekho as he truly was, not just a gentle giant, but a warrior who had protected this place for over a century. "They have come before," the Catharan elder Dae Sung said, his voice shaking with old fear. 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Each time Bekho drove them away, but each time they return with stronger weapons. Captain Park Sora was checking her equipment with practiced efficiency. "How many are there usually?" "Perhaps 50 warriors. They are strong and cruel, bred for war." Dae Sung looked at the small group of humans. "You should flee while you can. This is not your fight." But Taemin shook his head. "Bekho is my friend. I will not abandon him." Through the temple's crystal walls, they could see the void hunters marching up the mountain path. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and black eyes that reflected no light. Their armor was made from the same dark metal as their ships, and they carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Bekho moved to the temple entrance, his massive form filling the crystal archway. He let out a roar that shook the entire mountain, a sound that spoke of ancient power and absolute determination. The Void Hunters paused in their advance, but only for a moment. Their leader, a scarred creature with metal implants covering half his face, stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "Guardian, your time is over. We have weapons now that can pierce your flesh and shatter your bones. Surrender the temple's treasures, and we will make your death quick." Bekho's response was another roar, even louder than the first. But Taemin could see the truth that the Void Hunters also saw. The Great Guardian was tired. 100 years of protecting this place had worn him down, and he was no longer the unstoppable force he once was. "Taemin, we need to evacuate," Captain Sora said urgently. "My ship can be here in 10 minutes. "No," Taemin said firmly. "Bekho has been alone too long. He needs help." Dr. Lee Jinwoo was already unpacking his geological equipment. "The crystal formations conduct energy very efficiently. If we can overload them somehow, we might be able to create a barrier." Dr. Choi Ye-jin was studying her tablet, her fingers flying over the controls. "The temple's systems are still partially active. There might be defensive measures we can activate." The Void Hunters began their attack with weapons that fired bolts of pure energy. The shots hit Bekho's thick fur and left smoking wounds, but the Guardian pressed forward. His claws, each one as long as a sword, raked across the dark armor of the nearest attacker. But there were too many of them. For every Void Hunter that fell, 2 more took their place. Bekho fought with the fury of 100 years of loneliness and grief. But slowly, inevitably, the enemy began to overwhelm him. That was when Taemin made his choice. He ran from the temple's safety, dodging energy bolts and leaping over the bodies of fallen void hunters. Several of the gray-skinned warriors turned their weapons on him, but he was small and fast, and desperation gave him speed. He reached Baekho's side just as the Guardian stumbled, a particularly powerful energy blast having burned through his shoulder. The great creature looked down at him in shock and what might have been fear. "I told you, friend," Taemin said, pulling out his small research laser and adjusting it to maximum power. "I will not abandon you." The sight of a human willingly standing beside the legendary Guardian sent a shock through both armies. The Void Hunters had expected to face a tired old beast, not a creature with a human ally who showed no fear. But, more importantly, something extraordinary happened to Baekho. The presence of his human friend, the knowledge that he was no longer alone, awakened power that had been sleeping inside him for decades. His wounds began to heal, his fur shone brighter, and his eyes blazed with renewed strength. "Impossible," the Void Hunter leader snarled. "Humans are weak. They cannot bond with Guardians." He was wrong. As Taemin fought beside his friend, other humans began to join them. Captain Sora appeared with her military-grade weapons, her face set in determination. "If my scientist stays, I stay." Jinwoo came next, carrying improvised explosives made from his geological charges. Someone has to protect the knowledge in this temple. Yejin was the last to arrive, but she brought the most important contribution. "I have activated the temple's defense systems," she announced. "The crystals are now generating a protective field." The Ketharan elder Dai Sung watched in amazement as humans and their guardian fought side by side. "In all our histories, no species has ever chosen to stand with Baekho. They fear his power too much. Humans are different," Taemin said, dodging another energy blast. "We do not fear what we do not understand. We try to understand it instead." The battle raged for hours. The Void Hunters were strong and experienced, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Baekho, empowered by friendship and no longer fighting alone, was unstoppable. The humans, small and fragile compared to the other warriors, proved to be clever and brave beyond expectation. Jinwoo used his knowledge of geology to cause rock slides that trapped groups of Void Hunters. Yejin turned the temple's own systems against the invaders, using crystal formations to redirect their energy weapons back at them. Sora provided tactical coordination, turning their desperate defense into an organized counterattack. And Taemin stayed beside Baekho throughout it all, a small figure next to the massive Guardian, proving that trust could overcome any difference in size or species. When the sun set over Cathara, the Void Hunters were retreating to their ships. Their leader, his armor cracked and his metal implants sparking, glared at the unlikely alliance that had defeated them. "This is not over, Guardian. We will return with more ships, more weapons." Baekho's response was a roar that shook the stars, themselves. But this time, he was not alone. Beside him stood humans who had chosen friendship over fear, and around them gathered Ketharans who had seen something they thought impossible. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to stand beside monsters and call them friends. 6 months had passed since the battle with the Void Hunters, and planet Cathara looked very different now. Where once there had been only the ancient Crystal Temple and scattered Catharan settlements, a new community was growing. Humans and Catharans worked side by side, building homes and research facilities that blended the best of both their technologies. Dr. Kim Taemin stood on the balcony of his new laboratory, watching the sun rise over the valley. Below him, Baekho was playing with a group of young Ketharan children, his massive paws gentle as flower petals as he helped them climb on his back. The sight made Taemin smile. The great guardian who had once been feared throughout the galaxy was now beloved by everyone who lived here. "The morning reports from Earth Command," Captain Park Sora said, joining him on the balcony. She handed him a tablet filled with messages from their home planet. "They are very interested in your progress." Taemin scrolled through the communications, noting requests for more information about Catharan crystal technology, and formal invitations to establish permanent diplomatic relations. They want to send more people. 100 scientists, 50 engineers, and 20 diplomats on the next transport, Sora confirmed. Plus families. Earth wants to make this a real colony, not just a research station. It was exactly what Tae-min had hoped for, but also what worried him. We must be careful, Sora. The knowledge in the temple is powerful enough to change everything, but also dangerous enough to destroy everything. Through their months of careful study, Dr. Choi Ye-jin had unlocked some of the temple's technological secrets. The crystal databases contained the collected wisdom of dozens of civilizations, including scientific discoveries that humanity would not have made for centuries. But they also contained weapons technology that could end planets and biological warfare techniques that could wipe out entire species. Baekho had made his position clear. The knowledge would be shared, but only with those who proved they could be trusted with it. So far, the small human Catharan community had passed every test the Guardian set for them. Speaking of being careful, Sora said, pointing toward the valley entrance. We have visitors. A group of ships was approaching, but these were not the dark vessels of the Void Hunters. These ships were sleek and silver, with markings that identified them as belonging to the Galactic Council, the loose alliance of species that governed most of the known galaxy. Ambassador Kang Min-ho, who had arrived the previous month to establish formal relations with the Catharans, hurried up the stairs to the balcony. They are requesting permission to land. 3 council species, including the Alteri and the Zentaurans. Tae-min felt a familiar flutter of nervousness in his stomach. The Galactic Council had heard rumors of what was happening on Cathara, and they wanted to see for themselves. If the humans had truly formed an alliance with the legendary Guardian, it would change their standing in galactic politics forever. Tell them they are welcome, Tae-min said finally. But they must follow our rules while they are here. An hour later, the delegation stood in the Crystal Temple, staring up at Baekho with expressions of awe and terror. The Alteri ambassador, a tall blue-skinned being with silver eyes, was trembling visibly. The Zentauran representative, covered in golden scales, kept backing toward the exit. Impossible, whispered the third delegate, a creature Tae-min did not recognize. The white tiger of the stars bows to no one. How do mere humans command such a being? We do not command him, Tae-min replied calmly. We are his friends. To demonstrate, he walked up to Baekho and scratched behind one of the Guardian's massive ears. The great creature purred with contentment, the sound filling the temple with peaceful vibrations. The watching delegates gasped in shock. Friendship. The Catharan elder Dae-sung explained to the visitors. It is a concept humans understand better than most species. They do not seek to conquer or control. They seek to understand and cooperate. Over the following days, the council delegates observed the unusual community that had grown around the temple. They watched humans and Catharans sharing meals, working together on research projects, and raising children who spoke both languages fluently. They saw Baekho serving not as a weapon or a tool, but as a friend and protector to everyone who lived there. Most importantly, they witnessed the careful way the humans approached the temple's ancient knowledge. Instead of grabbing everything they could carry, they studied each piece of information slowly and thoroughly. They considered not just what they could do with each discovery, but whether they should do it. Engineer Yu Hai-in had become the leader of the technology integration team, working with Catharan scientists to develop new tools that improved life for everyone without creating weapons or causing environmental damage. Their first successful project had been a crystal-powered water purification system that could clean the water of an entire city using no more energy than a small generator. Your species shows remarkable wisdom, the Alteri ambassador admitted to Captain Sora on their final day. Most races that discover such power use it to dominate others. You use it to build friendships. Sora smiled. That is what makes us human, I suppose. We see potential allies where others see potential threats. As the council delegation prepared to leave, they carried with them reports that would spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity, the young species that had only recently begun exploring. The stars had accomplished something no other race had managed in recorded history. They had gained the trust and friendship of one of the galaxy's most powerful guardians. The implications were enormous. Trade agreements began arriving within weeks. Defense pacts were offered by species who wanted humans as allies rather than enemies. Scientific exchanges were proposed by civilizations eager to learn humanity's secret for making friends across species barriers. But for Taimin, the most important changes were much smaller. Each morning he woke up in his new home to the sound of children playing in the gardens below. Human and Ketharan youngsters growing up together, learning each other's languages and customs as naturally as breathing. Each evening, he would sit in the temple with Bekho, sometimes talking about their discoveries, sometimes just enjoying the comfortable silence of old friends. The great guardian was no longer the lonely protector of ancient secrets. He was the heart of a growing community, beloved by all who lived there. "Do you think Princess Nari would be proud of what we have built here?" Taimin asked one evening, as they watched the stars appear in the darkening sky. Bekho's response was a gentle rumble that seemed to say yes. The guardian's blue eyes were bright with something that had been missing for over a century: hope. 3 years later, when Mioid, the first human Catharan child, was born, Bekho was there to greet her. The baby girl, named Nari in honor of the princess who had sacrificed everything to protect the temple's knowledge, reached out with tiny hands to touch the guardian's white fur. There was no fear in her touch, only curiosity and wonder. As Taimin watched his daughter meet his oldest friend, he realized that they had created something truly special on Cathara, not just a colony or a research station, but a new way of living among the stars. A way based on trust instead of fear, cooperation instead of conquest, and friendship instead of dominance. The galaxy was a big and often dangerous place, filled with species that saw difference as threat and power as something to be hoarded. But here on Cathara, in the shadow of a crystal temple and under the protection of a great white guardian, children of different worlds played together in gardens that bloomed with flowers from a dozen planets. It was proof that the universe could be a better place, if only more beings were willing to sleep beside the monsters and discover they were not monsters at all, but friends waiting to be found.